Good afternoon, everyone, and most welcome to age 797. Just a merely 3 lectures left. We need to savor these lectures really good. And I have to admit, it makes me nervous to think of the last mile here. I'll do my very best to say something worthwhile. Today I will talk a little bit about how do you change, and that's inspired by David Barder, his revolutionary insight into what is the working process in our system, something that we haven't known about before, and it can actually explain a lot of things, like the complaints of Alan Bloom of the present state knowledge level, things that we notice from neurology, the sinking of intelligence and capabilities among pupils and students, and I'd say also the thing we usually call stress. That is something that David Barder's marvelous insight can sort of both explain and show us a way how to alleviate them. Let me just put an example. A person that suffered some sort of damage to the frontal lobe will be calm only shortly after the accident. But what eventually will happen is that the person gets more and more stressed. The person has no incapacity and can explain what it should do, but it cannot perform it. And it can also, which is the worst, notice that the person himself or herself cannot perform the things anymore. And that's incredibly stressful. And that's also what happens with a person that has suffered some sort of burnout or another trauma. That affects, before everything else, the frontal lobes. So they will not be able to especially say no to different actions. It's the no circularity that is the most sensitive. And once that gets disrupted, the actions do not follow the wishes of the person anymore. Not being able to perform thanks to too many actions being ignited at the same time in the brain and in the system. We are doing contradictory things, and this is what I mentioned in the last episode, I think. When we get out of a chair, we try to sit down in the chair at the same time, but also when we sit in the chair, we don't sit properly. It's like we are on our way up still. And those are 2 or 3 or 4 opposing actions that haven't been stopped by the person. And of course that is vexing for the person, but it's also a stress moment for the whole body, because by putting different actions that often are contradictory into the body, you enforce tension in the body. And this actually brings to my mind something that Tad Damon said, the big explorer and researcher with an Alexander technique, and is that tension maybe is not a stress thing per se, it's rather actions that haven't been performed for some reason. So they are like latent actions. And once the actions are being performed or will be performed, the tensions naturally goes into the action. And that makes sense. I can sort of feel into that. If I have tense shoulders, it feels like that I'm about to do something, and nothing really happens in the end. Possibly because of these contradictory actions that are going on constantly. And that brought to mind some of my I have a contact group with 4 people. One in the contact group said, it was a she, I can tell. Well, they're all women in the group, so I'm not pointing at somebody specific. But she told me when she had a very struggle period, she was doing things in her sleep, actual things, like full actions. Usually when we sleep, we can do little actions like scratching or maybe almost kicking, things like that. But she made whole actions by sleeping. And that's something that struck me. That's the no process doesn't work. Even when she's sleeping, it's not active, doing its job, so you can sleep. And she woke up sometimes with her arm right up in the air, and that's, of course, is not a relaxing sleep. Other things, this is a word I don't know the English version. It's called medrörlighet. It's a quite unusual word in Swedish too. And it means that once you do one thing, you do some other thing at the same time. That is maybe not contradictory, but neither is it helpful. Medrörlighet is one thing that we learn to avoid when we are very small. And one thing is this: when we learn to write, we do something else with our body that is not necessary. Almost all children do this. It has nothing to do with the hand, it has nothing to do with the writing process. Can Kalle guess what that was? I don't know if you did it yourself, but you probably saw your schoolmates do it. Something we do.
You mean eating the pen? No, not.
No,
but
but it's not close from. It's not far from. It's not far from. What we usually do when we're very small is when you write, your tongue goes out. And school children have their tongues out most of the time. And I don't think today the teacher says to the child, put your tongue in. What happens when they learn the action is the tongue naturally goes into the mouth and stop being active. But that has actually a remaining effect in adults. In some adults, maybe the majority, the tongue is still active, but it's not outside of the mouth. And this is something I felt very keenly. And I think it's one of the main keys is to relax the tongue or not getting it involved in the process when you're doing something. And that's much more difficult than one thinks. That's a whole process. And I think in that process one needs to start little by little. When we do the yoga exercise, I notice when I go like this, the tongue immediately gets stuck up here and it's pressing. It's pressing. Once the tongue is pressing, the neck tenses because they are in cohort, they are together. Those are one of those things that could be a good key to that. Almost always there are at least 2 actions going on. And they can be contradictory, and they usually are actually just contradictory, I'll say. They do not help the movement, they even make the movement more difficult or more strenuous. This thing actually exists among animals as well, and they are performed when an animal doesn't know what to do. So if you're presented, for instance, a bird with a problem it cannot solve, it will start to arrange his feathers. And that's to take away the energy. The bird has an energy to maybe to get a piece of seed or something. It doesn't know how to solve the problem, cannot get to the seed, and instead it starts to take care of its feathers. Those actions are also present in human beings in varying scales, and they involve maybe punting, scratching oneself, and the thing is, while doing that, every time you do it, you reinforce the habit. So the way to change is twofold. It must be twofold because it involves both mind and body. The first one, you need to stop the thing you are habitually doing. Every time you don't do it, there will be a signal to two systems. The neurological system, so to speak, where the no things are, so you get stronger in the no area. So saying no, it's a purpose of its own, because there is a special brain area that has to do with no, and that has to be trained. And this is very similar when we're talking about why repeating, root learning and such things. Is it so you will know the whole, the Quran, for instance, or something similar? Yes, well, of course, for the religious people, but it has a dual purpose. The second one is to establish a skill. That skill is not recognized because until recently we did not know about the frontal lobes and their action. Because the frontal lobes do not really, if this is a brain, they are situated here in the front, and they do not really have some clear purpose in the old categories. Doesn't contain knowledge, doesn't contain language, doesn't do any of those things. Nothing disappears if you take them away. Because we haven't understood the need for this. It was a no need before. So that's the reason why we now need to think very differently, and we need to develop skills that are based on repetition in different ways. And one repetition is continually change your habits. And you can start with bad habits, so to speak. And the main purpose in this is not to get rid of the bad habit. Main purpose is to develop this center. Because the executive center is madly important. Because they don't only see to that your actions get fulfilled, they also have something to do with thinking, and that's new thinking. Every time you think anything new, those things are involved, because they need to say stop to all thoughts, and by doing that they also need to construct new thoughts. So the old thoughts, these are the ones we have here, and simplified you can say the audio educational system only was addressing the old thoughts, the old thinking. But they don't amount to anything new, that's one problem. Another problem, which is most interesting I think, is that by pointing towards old knowledge so much, we get different effects. And one effect is actually that the world is out there. The more you repeat the idea that there are knowledge that is firm, monosemic maybe, it doesn't change, it's communal, shared. All these things, in the end, will passively construct an action via action, a feeling of there being a real world out there. And this, to its extreme, could be this psychological phenomenon, to its extreme, only in rare cases, which is called alienation. And alienation in these terms means that the person do not feel the reality that person is in is real. I think that's the last stage, very unusual, but just to show the point. The whole idea of a world out there is constructed by educational system putting too much energy in establishing the old. So it starts to feel finished, ready, unchangeable, not possible for it to be changed by my will. And as you see, this will also take away the will, because this is of course the center of willpower. A lobotomized person do not have willpower. It will, or that person, I said it, he or she I should say, but they almost act like it. They are sleepwalkers. They do only what they did before the operation. Nothing new comes to them. No new actions. That's why the doctors in that time thought it was a healing method, because they don't come up with new ideas. And if you are mentally ill, new ideas is usually a bad idea, as you can understand. But you see how crude and cruel, I would say also, science used to be. Because these people get passive in some ways. They could move about still, and they could do like violent things, but they didn't invent anything new. Nothing new came to their lives. Possibly this lack of understanding for this could also lead to this problem with dividing, prioritizing, and marginalization, because that's the action of this part. You can, if you come a little bit closer here, you can sort of imagine this part. This is the frontal lobe, the executive thing, that's the one I'm talking about. You can imagine this part of the brain being obsessed with things that are already made, finished things. Everything here is finished, nothing new happens. Things could be added, yes, but nothing new essentially happened. The categories that are already in place are there. New things will fall into those categories. This part of the brain always wants to know, how do I define this new thing in the old terms? Definition will here be, in the end, an either or function. Is it, let's assume a new thing come in here, this one, put it as a question mark. This is unknown for the system, and the system will ask, is this the same as this? You see, identity comes in here because we want to identify something, and it could amount to a no or a yes. And all of a sudden we have this dividing line, yes and no. And usually here it's very clear, no, it's not the same thing, or yes, it's the same thing. This part, it's interested in action, and then you never have this, because an action is not something you define. Action is to do with saying no or saying yes to systems, movements rather. This is more static. It has the feel of being completely static in some instances. But this is movement. Movement both in action and thinking. So this could actually be the seat of logocentrism, and we experienced the example just earlier on, where somebody said that the heaven, the spiritual was up there, not present here, not present. It's already, he's comparing to what he already has. He's been educated in this system. So those things, spiritual things, are no here, not present, not here. Not being present, we know, usually is a bad thing. So the bad thing is somewhere else. And you also explain the new thing by saying it's a thing that's not here. That's a sort of an explanation. We need to understand that also the negative is a definition of some sort. Weird, Yes, but it's a definition. What do you have there in your hand? You can ask somebody. Well, I don't have candy. So if you ask me, that would make sense. I should not eat candy for some reason. My teeth maybe. So that's informative. Both the answers are informative. You could say that here we have stable representative information. And all of a sudden you understand, why does this part of the brain perceive a stable, unchanging world? World of Plato or similar? Well, it's because of how it's built up. And the more you ignore this one, the more this will shrivel into not being able to change anything. How do you change it? Well, you activate that one. You can activate it, and people used to do it, and it can still be done. The whole brain is plastic. So I'd say there is a dual action of change, and ignite two things in your system. Ignite action, do new action, and in the end this will change. Because neurons and muscular activity are connected. They are 100% connected. You cannot do persistently a new, better action and not change your thinking in the end. If you do a bad action, you will change your thinking. In the bad direction, it's that simple. Do the better action. As my friend Jan Eisken sometimes said, what's the solution if you cannot do your work? Well, you do it, and you do it. Finally, your system will change. But that is not the whole solution. It's a dual system, dual action of change. The second action is to change your thinking, and we need to change this thinking. This one you can leave, but how do you do that? Well, you will eventually learn how to activate the no center. You can stop thoughts. Thoughts are like minuscule actions in your head. You will be able to stop them. And in the beginning, it will feel really impossible. But here is the active. The more you train your changing of action, and the more you make that stronger, eventually you will get the power to activate the no area. And what happens when you activate the no area, the more you activate the no area, the more it also becomes clear what is the yes area. The yes area means a little bit more than yes and no in this old brain. Yes area means new action. So it's not yes in the old sense, it's more yes in affirmative, positive in that way. Good for you. Because it is not a stable world. And there are people out there who realize that, either implicitly or explicitly. Those are the people with good fortunes in life because they think in a different way. And somewhere they understood thinking in a different way is very good. Opportunities are out there, they never stop to exist. Although 9 years in the schooling system, add 3-4 years in the high school, and then you go to university, everything feels fixed and ready, and no change can happen. And everything is based on the old stuff. Yes and no questions in that limited sense, as dichotomy sense of it. This is actually a bit different. It's more to do with new actions. And you will feel it. I felt it the other day. This is a complete new action. Something I never done before. And it's an amazing feeling. And it's also a feeling of liberty, freedom. Because this is coming in a half philosophical area here. This is very much connected to free will. So although this part of the brain can make a choice, it's limited to the choice yes and no. Whereas here you say no to all the multitudes of action. All that already there, you have a lot more choices than two. You have millions of choices. But then you come into the yes neurons, and that's about inventing new actions, both for thinking, new way of seeing something, and also for action, a completely new action. And that is, of course, creativity. And in the West, we don't think creativity can be taught. Whereas in the East, they are exclusively focused on teaching creativity to make the person develop his or her skills for creativity, attacking this part of the brain. Now we need to look out for those stopping things, and there are mental blockages that hinders us from thinking in this more positive way, this more creative way. Our dear friend Edward de Bono wrote a lot about that. I'm right, you wrong is obviously talking about this in some sense, because you get obsessed with being right. Maybe you don't have to tell everybody you're right, but you will think that you are right yourself somehow. And you know it's not socially accepted to say to everyone that you're right, therefore you say I'm uncertain about those things. But deep inside, your brain will tell you that you are right, and you're only making a compromise to survive. And I think that is a very common feature among teachers today. This is what they think, and there are only three ways of going: yes and no, and some sort of compromise where you give up somewhere. And we all know what Edward de Bono thought about compromises. The midline between two bad choices is not a good choice. Creativity is the answer. This part of the lobe. And it saddens me that, in a way, Edward de Bono never know about David Barter. I would think that's impossible. But he was a neurologist as David Barter was. That would have been very, very interesting. And a lot what Barter says sounds similar to Edward de Bono, but in different words. He speaks about action. Edward de Bono spoke about what should become, which is also action. And he criticized or tried to reveal this stable tendency that are either or. No and yes system. No and yes system usually strands in the end. If you are meeting somebody, and even if this person is not present, it's a presumed idea that you want to fight, and persons are maybe not even existing, like Plato or somebody else, or a general idea. It could also be an idea that you have in your mind and you want to sort of struggle with it. And there is a problem there. And in this case, it's not black and white either. It's something that also Edward de Bono acknowledged. Sometimes there are actual yes and no questions. That's obviously the case. But those are just examples. I can have in my head anything, and by antagonizing it, I could limit myself to the arguments or actions, for that matter, because the negative of a positive action or a thought is just a mirror image. It's just a mirror image. It's not something new, actually. And it's very easy to turn an argument. Do you want to put the Systembolag hemvård? I say no. They say yes. Maybe the solution is something else. Sell the alcohol in normal shops. Wasn't even in the point. Usually a good solution is outside the picture of yes and no. It's neither alternative. And now maybe you see a little bit why it is for yourself problematic to work on this divide model. Even if you are partaking in the divide model world, even if you are everybody around you are using it, you could, by sort of going around it, get a lot more opportunities. It's like you're learning a super skill they cannot play in because they just have yes and no. You could at an instant make the division somewhere else. They cannot, because they already started with this internalizing the whole thing, prioritizing one thing, marginalization the other one, and made it very tough not to crack. You're standing there with your, and we heard loads of those things earlier on here, and I really like that one with the spiritual being not present here. It's like already, if I would have been a spiritual person, I would already be damned from the beginning. By his very definition, I would be outside of the picture. I'm already losing the game. And he would think, I'm just making things up here, but he would think to his head, I'm gaining and I'm winning things, because already by my definition, I casted him out. I made his views marginalized. And that is not true. We have a lot more to gain, not to divide, not, especially not marginalize and prioritize. Divide we can do at an instant without getting stuck to it. So what seems to be a great benefit for the arguer himself or herself is not that nice. And there are internal problems. If you marginalize the other thing, it's bound to come back. It's this parasitic tendency. You are sort of going on the last few. You're using your own system. It's like you're running a marathon. The last couple of miles, you are taking the energy from your muscles. So in the end, you end up with less muscles. Of course, it's a marathon. You can do it once in a while. But here in this case, if you do it every day, you're bound to become exhausted. It takes a lot of energy. So there are better ways. And Barder is one of those people showing me that there are much better ways to go around. And you can play the game in a way that just be, what? He just changed sides. How can he do that? It's impossible. This is magic. Well, that's what you actually can do. Some people are good at that. Actually, this famous talker, Jordan Peterson, is excellent in that. So he looks relaxed when he does it. You need to be relaxed as well. The more stressed you are, the more on the attack you are, the more you already marginalize the ideas of the opponent. There's a famous example. There is an interviewer, a female journalist, makes an extraordinary attack. She really thought about that on Jordan Peterson. She just lays it up and puts him in the marginalized area, and she thinks to herself, I've beaten you now, how will you respond to this? And he just says, you're absolutely correct. And she's like, she almost lost the interview. This is deconstruction in action, although Jordan Peterson doesn't like Derrida. He deconstructs a lot, just by not being that aggressive, just by not being that much on the defensive, that you get more balance. Because I think if I on my attack towards you, this is the position I put myself in. Look here. This is an actual body position. If you're going to attack somebody, this is anger, and this is the defense. Both those actions are almost like the divide. So there is a codependency, and it's just like a picture. If we have a nice picture here, I say this is a nice picture. And Kalle asked me, which parts do you prefer in the picture? Well, I prefer the flowers, and I sort of like this. I like these scissors. And then Kalle says, well, why don't you cut them out then? Just keep the things you really like. And I use these scissors and I cut this out. I keep this and I put it here. The rest I don't like, take it away. And in the end, I destroy the painting. And I actually don't like this part. This is the truth, I swear. But it's the wholeness that makes it. So, yeah.
Yes. Actually, I made a homework this week about if you take holy water in a bottle. So I used the construction to show that the bottle and the water are, should be on the equal level. The bottle should therefore be also appealing on the same level.
Yes.
And then so I made some type of comparison with painting frame. So the edge frame is as important. So the teacher replied and said, so if you have Mona Lisa, do you think that the frame is more important than the Mona Lisa itself?
Well, if I had Mona Lisa, you should answer him. I would just cut out the most important in Mona Lisa, and everybody knows that's the smile. So I just have the smile. I would pay $100 million. I buy the picture and I cut out the smile, and I can keep it in my pocket. So sometimes you need to do those. Yes, sometimes you need to divide, that's true, but don't get stuck in the division. And apparently your teacher has done that. Because if you permanently, by habit, if you don't change this area and you get stuck in this, you become like a dinosaur. And a dinosaur, which is typical for them, they have very little options to do. In their lives, it's just going forward and backs like a train, something like that. Here you get so much more up. Actually, if you really deconstruct that, your options could be infinite. And not what I'm striving to here. I'm just going to give some manual things we need. And this is also coming from De Bono, and I say we need order for this to happen. So although it sounds like I'm criticizing order, order comes into the picture here as well. Edvard de Bono is a good example. Of course, he was not a sloppy guy when it came to the creativity. He said we need logic, we need division. But there is an area where there is something else going on, the creativity area. And you need Mona Lisa frame. I literally mean a Mona Lisa frame to your reality. And these three things, actually, some of them are recommended by Jordan Peterson, and he's right again. You need order in your life, you need cleanliness, and you need what I call correctness. Correctness is the toughest thing. And it's like you do something, and this is to activate this. All three are to activate this area, but the action is doing its best job with correctness. Correctness, we don't have a word for the word I'm looking for here. It exists in Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. And it's hard to explain what it is. But they continually train it. Sort of, so to speak, doing something right, or, well, that's a good example. If I have a tie, there is different ties you can do, different knots. And when you do those knots, for instance, the Oxford knots, which is very complicated, needs to be in the right sort of feeling, the right tension. And then you get this perfect knot. Most people don't do that one because the normal one doesn't take that you do it specifically with this tension, because the other one we can always adjust. And the more difficult one takes more correctness, so to speak. And there you train you hone your ability to say no to different things, and you're also starting slowly to hone making better the yes thing, because the affirmative thing will come. And that's how you learn to tie a tie. It's in the beginning, there your hands goes in different direction, and you slowly learn to say no to those actions. For instance, the first time you tie a tie, you just want to make a normal knot. That you need to say no to on different levels. It's almost like your hands want to do the old knot. I will go to that. And then you learn to say more and more no. And in the end, the whole knot becomes affirmative. Something, a sort of positive action in itself. And now, by doing no things, saying no, 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 better write this, saying no, 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 in the process of learning to different things in this part of the brain. And once you have this new action that is sort of molded, sculptured by the no, you can call the no the hammer and chisel of the statue maker. And then you chisel out the action that becomes a yes. And that action has a different feel. You just know how to do it. So no longer any, in the end, it's no longer any need for any no's inside of this action. This is the action of tying a tie. I like that word. But outside of that action, you can have a no. You can stand in front of the mirror and you choose between a fly and a tie, and you start you have to say no. I'm not gonna tie the fly like a tie, tie the fly like a fly. So you can, on a higher level, say no to that one, but it's no longer any need for any no's inside, because you have an action that's been established. And that's also new action. And this is a way of creating new actions. And I would say in 90% of the cases, this is actually how we create new actions. We take the old actions, and they are a lot, they are gazillions of them. For instance, even such an odd thing to learn like riding a bike. I used my ability to walk to understand bike riding. Isn't that odd? The difference is huge. Of course, it took a lot of no's, but I did not learn it from scratch. I learned it from my ability to walk. And afterwards you think, oh, I can bicycle. I just learned it like that. No, it was a lot of no saying. And you had to stop the idea of falling, because when you walk, you should not fall in that way as you fall when you cycle. But if you're sitting on the bike, you won't fall. Actually, by falling, you ride the bike. You put yourself out of the weight point, balance point. Otherwise, you won't ride the bike. And this is also similar to skiing. Skiing is falling. You are in a really precarious position. And you need to convince the body, say no to it, so that you can start to ski. Because that's falling. It's a position that's very precarious. And if I stand like skiing now, I will fall on the ground. No doubt about that, because my angle is really weird. But in combination with the slope you have when you ski, it's no problem. As long as you have the slope. It's not present, it won't work. Yeah, Kalle.
Yes, so it's very boring to say no, 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 no.
Yes.
Can you do it more fun by instead saying ni ni ni? Is it possible?
Well, you don't have to say. You don't. Yeah. I think you. Yes, of course. Yeah. You learn as you go ahead to make this a much more fun thing. But of course, it's quite boring. And I don't remember, at least in the beginning, me learning to ride a bike was funny. it was hugely encouraged by my parents. But once I got like halfway, I started to understand a new habit could be formed. And from then onwards, it was loads more fun. So it has to do with how complicated, how hard the action is. There is a Japanese flute called the shakuhachi. It takes 1 year to get the sound out of it. And I would say, no, I would never ever learn the shakuhachi. And I wouldn't recommend anyone to learn the shakuhachi. It's too troublesome. But maybe that person who learns it, he has such an excellent power of that one, so he can make that learning process fun as well. But it needs to be fun. I think you have a point, that needs to be fun. Needs
Encouragement in form of chocolate or something.
Yes, and you need to also put your head, I'm doing this now in order to learn it. You need to be singular, need to be straight in your decision. This is prana as well. Prana goes straight, don't get diverged on the end. Don't try to learn the bike at the same time as you do SMSs, because your whole system likes to do one thing at a time only when you learn new things. That's extraordinarily important. You also need to put your head, I really want to ride the bike. That's important. You need to see yourself in the position of this new ability before it's happened. That's important. That's very important. To see yourself like a bike rider before you learn to do the bike. Because intention is everything. Everything. Because in the end, you put this nose with your own intention. That's the prana. The more decisive you make the no, and the no inside the head cannot be made by anything other than pure will. Nobody can hit you into learning the bike. And you cannot hit yourself. You need something even better, and that's progressing willpower. And the willpower is different in every human being. And this is the one we learn to train here too. It's not trained today. Actually, all this passiveness, all this idea of a world outside takes away the willpower. It makes you less filled with prana or energy, because it tells you, you are not responsible for what happens. And that is detrimental to the development of this skill, so to speak. But it's, of course, it's not an aggressive skill as such. You don't shout to yourself, stop it, stop it. It's much more refined than that. And I can see people, especially that have been classically educated here in Sweden, they have a great problem to motivate themselves in a very gentle manner, as the will could be. The will could be something very gentle that actually says no in a very nice way, almost like somebody who's excellent with water skiing, who just goes through the waves like in a very smooth way, because this is smoothness to this one. Well, I think we have to round about there and say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon.
Thank you.